The room went silent. I stood at the back of the mahogany-paneled boardroom, my hands clasped behind my back, watching as Marcus Sterling, the senior VP, raised a crystal glass of scotch. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and the smug satisfaction of men who had never spent a night worrying about rent. I had spent 6 months preparing the Titan Project merger, 3,000 hours of data analysis, legal vetting, and sleepless nights. I was the architect. Marcus was just the face. "To the future of Sterling and Associates," Marcus boomed, his teeth flashing like a predator's. "And to our newest junior partner, the man who spearheaded the Titan acquisition, my nephew, Julian." The applause was deafening. I felt the blood drain from my face. Julian, a 24-year-old who couldn't explain a basic balance sheet, stood up and took the bow that belonged to me. He smirked at me, a look of pure, inherited arrogance. Marcus didn't even look my way. To him, I was a ghost. I was the spreadsheet guy, the invisible engine that kept his Ferrari running while he took all the laps. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a notification from my private server. The sealed envelope I had prepared months ago was now active in the system. I had seen this coming. Marcus had a habit of forgetting promises made in private offices, but I had a habit of recording everything. Not just audio, but the digital trail of every lie he'd told the board to secure this merger. "Elias," Marcus said, finally noticing me as the crowd began to disperse. He didn't use my last name. He didn't even use a respectful tone. It was the voice one uses for a waiter who forgot the napkins. "Be a good lad and clear these glasses, will ya? Julian and I are heading to the club to celebrate. Oh, and I'll need the Titan secondary files on my desk by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Try not to mess them up." Julian let out a sharp, mocking bark of a laugh as he slapped me on the shoulder, nearly knocking me off balance. "Great work on those slides, buddy. They really helped me look good." I didn't say a word. I didn't get angry. I simply adjusted my glasses and looked Marcus straight in the eye. I saw the flicker of annoyance in his gaze. He hated it when I didn't look down. He didn't know that I wasn't looking at my boss anymore. I was looking at a man who had just handed me the keys to his own destruction. As they walked out, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, silver flash drive. I wasn't always the quiet guy in the corner. 8 years ago, I entered this firm with a master's in finance and a hunger to build something. But Marcus Sterling saw something in me that he preferred to exploit rather than promote, a lack of ego. He realized early on that I cared about the work, while he only cared about the credit. He began to mold me into his shadow. For years, I was the one who fixed his catastrophic errors. When he nearly lost the Miller account because he was too drunk to read the contract, I stayed up 48 hours straight to rewrite the terms. When he was accused of harassment by a junior clerk, I was the one who found the accountant ledger that proved he hadn't used company funds for the settlement, even though he had. I had become his fixer, his nobody, his replaceable tool. "You're lucky to be here, Elias," he told me once during a late-night session. He was leaning back in his Italian leather chair, tossing a stress ball against the wall. "Men like me are the hunters. Men like you are the gatherers. You provide the arrows, I kill the prey. Don't ever confuse your role for mine. You're just an employee. Without my name on the door, you're just a guy with a calculator and a mortgage." I remembered those words every time I saw my name omitted from the annual reports. I remembered them when I was told there was no budget for my bonus, while Marcus bought a 3rd vacation home in the Hamptons. My wife, Sarah, had begged me to quit. "They're draining you, Elias," she'd say over cold dinners. "You're a genius, and they treat you like the janitor of data." But I couldn't quit. Not yet. I knew that Marcus was sloppy. He was so blinded by his own perceived brilliance that he started leaving a trail. He began BCCing me on emails he shouldn't have. He started giving me access to his private S-file server to clean up the messy transactions he didn't want the IRS to see. He thought I was too loyal, or too stupid to ever use it against him. He was wrong. I wasn't loyal. I was meticulous. Every time he humiliated me in a meeting, I added a file to my email chain backup. Every time he called me replaceable, I mapped out exactly how much the firm would bleed if I were gone. I sat at my desk at 2 a.m., the office lights humming, and opened the Titan Group's master contract one last time.
The morning after the promotion announcement, I walked into Marcus's office. I didn't have the secondary files he asked for. I had a resignation letter. I expected him to be shocked, perhaps even offer a small raise to keep his gatherer around. Instead, he didn't even look up from his phone. "Put it on the pile, Elias," he said dismissively, "and don't think this earns you a severance package. You're quitting, which means you forfeit your remaining commissions on the Titan deal." "Marcus, I spent 6 months on that deal," I said, my voice steady but low. "The commission is nearly $200,000. It's my work." Marcus finally looked up, his face contorting into a mask of pure contempt. "Your work? It's my firm. My name is on the contract. You were just a pen I used to sign it. Now get out. Security is already on their way up to escort you. I don't want a disgruntled former staffer lurking around my confidential files." 2 security guards appeared at the door. One of them, a man named Gary, who I'd shared coffee with for years, looked away in shame. Marcus stood up, walked over to me, and leaned in close. "You're a nobody, Elias. By next week, nobody will even remember you worked here. I've already told HR to flag you as non-rehirable for incompetence. Good luck finding a job at a Starbucks, let alone another firm." I was led out of the building like a criminal. My personal belongings were tossed into a cardboard box. As I stood on the sidewalk in the rain, Julian watched from the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive lounge, raising a glass of champagne and a mock toast. He thought he had inherited the kingdom. But as I walked to my car, I wasn't crying. I was counting. I knew something Marcus had overlooked in his rush to crown his nephew. The Titan Group, the biggest client in the firm's history, didn't sign with Sterling & Associates because of Marcus's charm. They signed because of a specific key man clause I had buried on page 114 of the legal disclosures, a clause that Marcus, in his arrogance, had never bothered to read. I got into my car, opened my laptop, and sent a single encrypted message to the CEO of the Titan Group, Arthur Vance. The message contained a single PDF titled "The Truth About the Sterling Embezzlement." The aftermath of my firing was brutal. Marcus didn't just want me gone, he wanted me destroyed. Within 48 hours, I received a cease and desist from the firm's legal team, claiming I had stolen intellectual property. My bank accounts were suddenly flagged for suspicious activity after a mysterious tip to the fraud department. Marcus was using his connections to freeze me out of the industry. Sarah was terrified. "Elias, they're coming for us. The bank called about the mortgage. Marcus is telling everyone you were fired for stealing company funds. No one will hire you." I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my laptop. "Let him play his hand, Sarah. He thinks he's playing chess, but he's just throwing a tantrum. He's cornered, and he doesn't even know it." The phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. "Mr. Thorne? This is Arthur Vance, CEO of the Titan Group. I received your information. To say I am disturbed would be an understatement. If these accounting ledgers are authentic, Marcus Sterling hasn't just been overcharging us. He's been laundering our retainer through a shell company in the Caymans." "They're authentic, Mr. Vance," I said calmly. "And if you look at the CCTV footage link I sent you, you'll see Julian Sterling entering the server room on the night the audit trail was accidentally deleted. They're planning to pin the discrepancies on me." "Why are you telling me this now?" Vance asked, his voice cold and calculating. "Because Marcus just fired the only person who knows how to fix it. And because according to the contract you signed, if I am no longer the lead analyst on your account, you have a 72-hour window to terminate the partnership without penalty and claw back your entire $500 million investment." There was a long silence on the other end. "I never saw that clause," he whispered. "I know," I said. "Marcus didn't see it either. He was too busy looking at his nephew's new title. Vance cleared his throat. "Elias, I need you to come to my office, now. We have a board meeting in 3 hours, and Marcus Sterling is expecting to sign the final merger papers. I think it's time for a change of plans. I'll be there, but I'm bringing my own lawyer."
The Titan Group headquarters was a fortress of glass and steel. As I walked into the lobby, I didn't look like a nobody anymore. I wore the suit I'd saved for the day I was supposed to become partner, the suit Marcus had laughed at. Arthur Vance's private secretary met me at the elevator. "Mr. Thorne, the board is waiting. And Mr. Sterling, well, he's already in the conference room. He seems very confident." I walked into the boardroom and the air shifted. Marcus was at the head of the table, Julian by his side, both of them grinning as they pushed a stack of papers toward Vance. When Marcus saw me, his face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. "What is this?" Marcus hissed, standing up so fast his chair hit the wall. "Vance, what is this man doing here? This is the disgruntled employee I told you about. He's a thief and a fraud. Security!" Arthur Vance didn't move. He didn't even look at Marcus. He looked at me. "Elias, please, take a seat." "Vance, you can't be serious," Julian chimed in, his voice cracking with nerves. "He was fired for incompetence. He's trying to sabotage the deal because he's jealous." I opened my leather briefcase and pulled out a single sealed envelope. I placed it on the table in front of Arthur Vance. "Mr. Vance, inside this envelope is the original, unedited contract with the Titan Group. You'll find my initials on every page as the primary drafter. You'll also find a hidden clause in Section 14.B regarding ethical integrity and personnel continuity." Marcus lunged for the envelope, but Vance's head of security stepped in his way. The room went dead silent as Vance broke the seal. He read the pages slowly, his eyes narrowing. "It says here," Vance began, his voice echoing in the large room, "that if the lead analyst, specifically identified as Elias Thorne, is terminated for any reason other than documented gross negligence, the Titan Group retains the right to acquire 51% of Sterling and Associates' outstanding shares at a preset distress valuation." Marcus froze. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. That's not in the contract. I read the contract." "No, Marcus," I said, my voice cutting through his panic. "You read the summary I gave you. You were too busy golfing to read the actual filing. Only the owner of the account, the person who actually did the work, knew about that clause." Vance looked up from the papers, a predatory smile forming on his lips. "It seems, Marcus, that you just fired the man who owns your company." Marcus let out a forced, hysterical laugh. "Ownership? Don't be ridiculous. I founded this firm. I own the shares. A clause in a client contract doesn't transfer my equity. This is a joke, a cheap legal trick from a man who's desperate." I looked at the clock. It was exactly 10 a.m. "Marcus, do you remember who the silent partner was when you started this firm 15 years ago? The one who provided the initial $5 million in capital?" Marcus blinked, his confidence wavering. "It was an anonymous trust. What does that have to do with anything?" "That trust was managed by my father," I said quietly. The room went silent again. "My father was the one you cheated out of his dividends back in '09. You thought he died penniless, but he didn't. He left me his records, and among those records was a hidden letter from my father explaining exactly how you forged his signature to dilute his shares." I pulled a DNA test paper and a set of old deed papers from my bag. "The anonymous trust didn't just provide capital, it held a death and succession veto. Since you fired me, the legal heir to that trust without cause, you triggered a bad actor provision that was written into the firm's charter before you even moved into this office." Julian looked at his uncle, his face pale. "Uncle Marcus, what is he talking about?" "Shut up, Julian!" Marcus screamed, his composure finally shattering. He turned back to me, his eyes wild. "You've been planning this? For 8 years? You sat in that corner office, taking my insults, doing my laundry, just for this?" "I didn't want the firm, Marcus. I wanted the respect you stole from my father. but since you wouldn't give me that, I'll take the firm instead." Arthur Vance stood up. "Marcus, the merger is off. However, the acquisition is on. As of 5 minutes ago, the Titan Group has exercised the distress buyout. We are now the majority owners of Sterling and Associates, and our first act as owners—" Vance looked at me and nodded. "Our first act," I said, "is to conduct a full forensic audit of your private accounts. Guards, please escort the former VP and his nephew out of the building."
Marcus didn't go quietly. As the security team moved in, he grabbed a heavy glass award from the table and smashed it against the edge of the desk. "You think you've won? You think you can just walk in here with some old papers and take what's mine? I'll burn this whole place down before I let you have it." He pulled out his phone and started frantically typing. "I've already initiated a data wipe. If I'm going down, the Titan project goes with me. Every server, every backup, every client file, gone in 60 seconds. Julian started crying, realizing his life of luxury was evaporating. "Marcus, stop! You'll go to jail!" "I'm already going to jail if they find those ledgers," Marcus screamed. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You're a ghost, Elias. You're nothing. You have no proof of anything if the servers are empty." I didn't move. I didn't even try to stop him. I just watched the progress bar on his phone as he sent the kill command to the firm's data center. "Is it done?" I asked calmly. "It's done," Marcus sneered, dropping the phone. "The Sterling database is a graveyard. You have no evidence of my embezzlement. You have no contract. You have nothing but a story." I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. "Marcus, do you really think I'd bring you into this room without protecting the evidence? 3 months ago, I noticed you were using a back door to hide transactions, so I installed a mirror on the system. Every file you just deleted was actually moved to a secure off-site server owned by the Titan Group's legal team." I pulled a flash drive from my pocket, and as for the kill command you just sent, it didn't wipe the servers. It triggered a direct upload of your entire private S file to the district attorney's office. You didn't just destroy the evidence, Marcus. You just confessed. Outside the boardroom, the sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway. The doors swung open, but it wasn't more security, it was the police. "Marcus Sterling?" a detective asked, holding up a warrant. "You're under arrest for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and evidence tampering." The police moved in with clinical efficiency. Marcus was handcuffed right there in front of the men he had spent his life trying to impress. The Titan of industry was now just a man in a rumpled suit, his face pressed against the mahogany table he used to rule. "This is a mistake," Marcus yelled as they led him toward the door. "Elias Thorne is the one you want. He's the one who managed the accounts. He set me up." The detective looked at me. I handed him a sealed envelope containing the audio file of our last meeting, the one where Marcus told me he'd already told HR to flag me for incompetence to cover his own tracks. "We have the recordings, Mr. Sterling, and we have the accountant ledger Mr. Thorne provided. It's a very clear trail. You might want to save your breath for your lawyer." As Marcus was dragged out, he passed by me. He stopped for a second, his eyes red-shot. "Why?" he whispered. "You could have just asked for the promotion. I would have given it to you eventually." "No, you wouldn't, Marcus. You don't give things, you take them. And you forgot that even the gatherers know how to set a trap." Julian was left sitting at the table, staring at his empty hands. He looked at me, pleading. "Elias, I didn't know. I just did what he told me. Please don't let them take me too." I looked at the young man who had mocked me just 24 hours ago. "Julian, you didn't do the work. That's your crime. In this world, if you don't know the foundation of the house you're living in, you shouldn't be surprised when it collapses." Arthur Vance stood up and walked over to me, extending a hand. "That was quite a performance, Elias, or should I say, Mr. CEO. I shook his hand, but I didn't smile. The victory didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a closing of a book. "I'm not interested in being CEO of Sterling & Associates, Arthur. That name is dead." "Then what do you want?"
I looked out the window at the city skyline. I want to finish what my father started. But there's one more thing you should see, Arthur. I reached back into my bag and pulled out the most important piece of evidence, a hidden letter from the original founder, Marcus's former mentor, who had died 10 years ago. Everyone thought he'd left everything to Marcus. "This is the succession clause of the entire firm," I said, handing the yellowed paper to Vance. Marcus thought he inherited the firm because he was the protege, but the founder's will had a condition. The firm was to be held in trust until a worthy successor could prove that Marcus was acting in bad faith. The condition wasn't a name, it was a test of integrity. Vance read the letter, his eyes widening. The founder knew? He knew Marcus was corrupt even then? "He suspected," I said. "He left a secret basement safe key in my father's possession. Inside that safe isn't money. It's the original undiluted shares of the company. My father didn't just have 10%. He had 51% in a blind trust, waiting for me to turn 30 and prove I could handle the truth." Vance looked at me with newfound respect. "So you didn't just take his client, Elias. You didn't just trigger a buyout. You've been the majority owner of this entire building since your 30th birthday last month." "I wanted to see if Marcus would change," I said quietly. "I gave him one last chance during the Titan merger to do the right thing, to give credit where it was due. He chose greed. He failed the test." The room was silent. The nobody they had ignored was the man who owned the chairs they were sitting in. I looked at the board members, the men who had laughed at Marcus's jokes while I did the work. They were all looking at me now, waiting for their orders. "The firm is being rebranded. Every employee will be vetted, every contract will be audited, and anyone who knew what Marcus was doing and stayed silent, you have 10 minutes to clear your desks." I turned to the window, watching the police car carrying Marcus disappear into the traffic. The rebranding of Thorne and Associates took less than a month. The Sterling name was scrubbed from the glass, replaced with a simple, elegant font. The firm didn't lose a single client. In fact, when the news broke that the silent genius behind the Titan deal was now in charge, more business flooded in than we could handle. Marcus Sterling was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. His nephew Julian lost everything in the civil suits that followed, and was last seen working as a junior clerk in a suburban real estate office, the very nobody job Marcus had threatened me with. I sat in the corner office, the big one Marcus used to occupy. It didn't feel different. I still stayed late, I still checked every decimal point, I still did the work. But now, when the Titan project or any other deal was signed, the name at the bottom of the page was the only one that mattered. Sarah walked into the office one evening, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She looked at the desk, then at me. "You did it, Elias. You actually did it." "No," I said, taking a sip of the coffee. "Karma did it. I just provided the evidence." I looked down at my desk where a small framed photo of my father sat. He was smiling in front of the old firm's original office. I had finally cleared his name. I had taken back what was stolen, not through violence or shouting, but through the quiet, relentless power of the truth. In the corporate world, they tell you you have to be a shark to survive. They tell you that the loudest man in the room is the one in charge, but they forget that sharks live in the water, and it's the quiet depth of the ocean that eventually crushes everything. I picked up my pen and began reviewing the next merger. The firm was thriving. The nobody was finally home. They called me a nobody until the judge read my name.